Still the Place with Laura Layton,
Courtney Thorne-Smith,
and Daphne Zuniga, an iHeartRadio podcast.
All right, girls, good to see you.
Yeah, so good to see you guys. It's been a very exciting morning for me.
Yes.
So I very earnestly watched episode 6 like a good girl on my Amazon, where I have bought the season because I'm such a kiss ass.
Wow.
And I came in today and Daphne started talking about it. It was not the episode I'd watched.
Yep. And she's staring at me like, are you crazy? And I go, you totally made out with Jake. And she's forgot.
Not on my, I went on vacation with Billy's parents. What happened?
It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that you watched
fault.
the wrong episode.
It was not, thank God, because as a good girl, I'd be devastated. So apparently on Paramount Plus and Amazon, they have different 6s and 7s. It's the only time it happens. So if you're following along with us and you're thinking, why aren't you talking about Allison going on vacation with Billy's parents? It's because you're watching on Amazon and
They're showing 7 before 6.
and they're showing 7 before 6.
Right.
So,
So
come
Paramount
back
Plus-
next week and then watch this episode that I just watched in the hallway because it's crazy good.
Yeah, it's
and I
good.
did. I made out with Jake
Yes.
3 times.
now,
Hello.
and aren't you glad you watched?
Times.
Let's get into it.
I don't
love this
remember. I was
episode.
like, oh my goodness, that is some pretty hot stuff. That was spicy.
Yeah, so the one we are supposed to be watching,
Yes.
and now Courtney's all
When
caught up.
you guys watched, how was it?
Well, you know what I loved about it is it was totally like the bad boy and good girl fantasy.
It felt like-
that's a fantasy for both types,
Yeah,
right?
it felt like Breakfast Club, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It was so
You
much
wouldn't have
fun.
liked me. I thought you would be too smart. I thought you wouldn't, it was great.
yeah,
I know, but we're cutting to the end.
Okay.
So we have to start at the beginning. But I literally watched it 3 minutes ago, so it's very fresh for me.
Nice.
I'm still a little heated up from it.
She's all ready to go.
very
all
hot.
right. So we are talking about season 1, episode 6, the title "Second Chances." And okay, so this episode opens on a poker game in Billy and Allison's apartment. And they're playing poker. Rhonda she needs to buy in. She wants to offer up tickets to a dance show instead of money. The gang says no way. And then the last round of cards, Allison's all in and she ends up scaring everybody out. They fold. Turns out she was bluffing.
But it was so cute the way I love seeing everybody together, right? It's
love
like
it.
we've done it at the pool, but I remember that we would get in so much trouble because we were laughing so hard. We just want to talk in between. It's like, but we don't all, as you guys know, I've been trying to get everybody to my house for dinner for now 30 years. So this is the only chance we had to sort of all be in a room talking and chatting. So it was like being kindergartners. We kept getting shushed. We kept getting in trouble, but the chemistry
was great.
among all of us was so sweet. It was, you could really see that we were friends.
Yeah.
Right? You could really
I think
see
those
it.
scenes were so important for that to start happening, that camaraderie. Do you remember shooting that scene? Like, do you remember sitting around the poker table?
I don't remember that scene exactly. It was fun to watch, but I remember having scenes when we were all together and we would get it. They were so frustrated with us, but we were so excited to be together because especially later when you guys came on, the storylines were so separate.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it really became more rare for us all to be together. So it was really so much fun
Always.
we were catching up. We're like, you've brought us all together. Don't make us stop and do our lines. It was very annoying.
It was always the most fun when we were all together.
the most fun.
And I love that this episode, we're starting to see that more often. And with last episode, too. Like, they're putting the characters all together.
Yes.
But it is sort of, they're still in this mode of just telling one character story at a time. They're not necessarily carrying over just yet.
Oh, yeah.
These are self-contained stories still. In this episode, we really are going to have an Allison and Jake storyline. And then we're also going to have a Rhonda storyline just as we're getting to know those characters individually.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, so the end of the poker hand, Allison reveals that the reason she was so good at bluffing is she feels like she's good under pressure. And that was also, by the way, how she studied in school. She would do it at the last minute. She'd cram for things because she was so good under pressure, she said. So she takes the pot. She wins the hand for the night. But Jake is like, the scene out is like him going, little thought on
What is
what
he
Allison said
thinking?
about. Yeah. So then we go.
He had some very Melrose lines. He says, I showed you mine, you show me yours.
Yeah.
That was the Melrose line. So
Yeah,
there's
little flirty there.
already this flirty foreplay happening and foreshadowing. And then I wouldn't have taken you for this. And then you said, well, you don't know me. And it was just this whole kind of thing, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
very key Melrose lines.
yeah, very.
I showed you mine. You show me yours.
Very subtle.
Very
Yeah.
subtle.
Super subtle.
Yeah.
So then we find Matt swimming in the pool. Rhonda coming to
Matt,
invite
topless.
him. Yeah, topless count. Rhonda's inviting him to go to this dance thing, and he has absolutely no interest in attending. She says, "I need you there." He says, "All right, I'll go." So
Of course he does, because he's the nicest person
he is
in
the
world.
nicest friend. And then Jake comes knocking on Allison's door the next morning, or later, the next morning, asking for help with something. Doesn't want to tell her what it is, but would she mind coming to his apartment later that night?
Right, which
No,
is
I have a
also
proposition.
as to Daphne's thing about the foreshadowing. So now you've already been set up that there's some chemistry, so it feels like.
Yes, and then he says,
could
"I
be
have a
something very
proposition."
sexy.
What is that
And
about?
Allison's like, huh? Oh.
So then we go to the dance performance, and Matt and Rhonda are watching the performance, and I think that Matt is just rapt. He is just loving the performance. He didn't expect to, and he
Yeah.
is just
They did
loving.
so much of the dancing.
Yeah,
it was
like they really
fantastic.
focused on the dancing. That was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, to see these amazing dancers who
Yes.
were clearly not just, extras. They were dancers, and doing what they were doing, the choreography, and that lead guy was amazing. It looked like
Amazing.
Alvin Ailey dance
and
company or something.
just for the prep work for that scene, like they
Yeah,
had to
and-
get those dancers together and rehearse it, and to shoot that sort of thing. It's like
and the music, I think
Yep.
it brought a lot into Melrose Place,
It
because
was
a lot
a
of
lot.
it is in the courtyard, and it was really cool to bring in that artist, that artistic, just bringing it into our gang. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and to give it that much time. I really liked it too. I was very impressed.
But I did happen to watch the show with Doug. I made him watch with me.
Okay.
And he's sitting there going, I don't remember
Any of this?
any of this episode. He
was a
didn't
while
remember the
ago.
poker game. And then he's like watching the concert. He's like, yeah, no recollection of watching this at all. And then as his character is like so enamored with the dancing, for a guy who didn't want to go in the first place. And then he's watching the show and he's so enamored and he's like, yes, I want to go backstage. Yes, I love this. What? And he said to me, he goes, what is Matt, straight?
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Who's your friend?
Because
He said
seemed to be
Teresa.
so like, I want to meet your
Yeah, I
friend.
want to meet her.
And it was confusing to him because he has no recollection of it all.
He's just great for Teresa.
But
So
he
he
was
goes
watching
backstage.
Matt. Yeah. So then before they go backstage, though, we find out what's going on with Jake and Allison. She shows up at his apartment and he reveals that his secret is he didn't have a great upbringing and he never finished with high school. And what he's doing now is studying for the GED. Would she help him?
And which is so sweet. And this is what makes Grant such a lovely guy and makes Jake such an interesting character, which is he's this tough guy. Same with Grant, too. It's something they share. But this incredibly sweet side, and that he can play both. I was so moved by the scene. I was just like,
The vulnerability
the
from the
vulnerabi-
tough guy.
Yes.
We love the vulnerable.
Oh, the vulnerable
Jake
tough guy.
character.
Oh, yes. Be
Because
still
that's
my
a
heart.
real,
Yummy.
it's not even like a vulnerability of like his feelings. To not have a GED, to not, have graduated not from college, but high school is a shame that, he carried around. So to open that up to you, the smart, pretty girl, I thought that was really, I don't know.
And he said,
love that writing.
that he was optimistic about it. Felt like for the first time he might have a future because he's decided to work towards this. But he does
Yes.
think maybe I need some help because I want to make sure that I get this. And so he's asking Allison.
Yeah,
for
and
her
to
help.
ask for help, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's such a sweet moment for when a man can ask for help. It's so important. It's a great thing to model too. I mean, this is a great,
Yeah.
such a sweet scene.
So then we're back at the dance performance, and Matt wants to meet the dancer friend, Teresa. So they go backstage to find her. I don't know if you guys noticed this. Do you know who opened the door to the dressing room to let
No.
them in?
No.
Chip Chalmers, one of
really?
one of our directors. He was one
Really?
of our recurring directors on Melrose.
Yes.
And
Well, Chip was
they would
also
often
the first AD, wasn't he? Or something?
often
Yeah.
he would. But they would often put crew members in
Yes.
as like little bit parts or like background perform. And sure enough, he had his headset
Oh,
on.
that's great.
And he opens the door like he's playing the stage manager.
Well, they saved
I
some money.
love
Theater
it.
performance. It was Chip.
Chip,
Chalmers.
open the doors.
I
Yeah.
love-
Some money.
Yeah. Again, that was Doug spotting Chip. He doesn't remember anything about the episode, but he's spotted. He's like, wait,
Oh, that's Chip.
rewind that. And sure enough, it was
Oh,
Chip
that's
Chalmers.
amazing.
Yeah, so that was fun. So they walk into the dressing room and they meet Teresa, and Teresa says to Matt, who's I loved the performance. Glad I could turn you on.
And then Rhonda says, "Well, only so far."
Well, only to a point.
Yeah. So tell
Eliciting
us what
a
you
dirty
want
look.
to tell us about this.
Eliciting a dirty look from Matt. Like, all right, really, Rhonda? Again, Doug has zero recollection of shooting that scene, but I did sort of note, like, we're just sort of like hinting around at the character of Matt being gay. Like, nobody's come out and said, "Oh, buddy, whatever." Like, it's not like an open conversation. It's just sort of like lines like this.
Yeah.
Those are the breadcrumbs we're just sort of like dropping
Oh,
for the audience.
really?
I asked Doug if there was anything like, were you not allowed to openly talk about it? Like, how, like, what were the parameters that was this a thing
allowed on
part of,
TV?
because there were so many things they weren't allowed to do and that they weren't comfortable pushing certain boundaries and stuff. And but anyway, I just sort of noticed it as like, oh, they're just leaving these little breadcrumbs, like, well, only to a point.
So
but
he doesn't
Rhonda
remember
just doesn't, she's not like
this episode.
she's
He
a
doesn't
little coy
remember
about
why
it.
it was written this way and why he played it that way. Because it was
No.
obviously flirty. I mean, all
I mean,
of
it
us
was,
noticed.
yeah,
that.
it was sort of like at first it looks like, oh, he's almost enamored with Teresa,
Yeah.
as being attracted to her, but turns out that's not it. He's
Yeah.
just sort of enamored with the
art,
the
and-
performance and the dancing, and he's
Yeah.
just really impressed with her
Got it.
dancing.
I can't remember. Did Doug remember? Is there a scene when he tells us? I thought we all knew.
No, I think
He's
I
gay.
think the characters all do. It's just everyone knows. It's just sort of interesting the way the show
Yes.
slips it
I
in or
remember
whatever. Like,
just that time, again, this is early 90s. And it was, I think a lot of men and women just were. It was
Yeah.
like their own self kind of like, don't ask, don't tell, or whatever, because it wasn't safe, especially in Hollywood actors.
You're right, it wasn't.
So
Yeah,
it was
so
like
true.
they're just going to be themselves, and if they meet someone, maybe they'll go somewhere else, or they're not open with it,
Right.
which is why it's so great now. So maybe that's in there. Here he is with this group of people, and he has a whole life of where he can tell it or not tell it, and
right.
maybe
It
not
was
feeling
just sort of the reaction to those
safe.
lines, like that Rhonda was like, well, only to a point, almost like it was like, we're gonna hint at this, but not really.
Yeah, and
like,
then it was
and then he's
ignored.
like, ugh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and then
true.
it
sort
was
of
like,
annoyed,
went on.
like
Yeah.
that was annoying or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was notable, I thought.
Yeah, so far the character is sort of overtly sexless. Like everybody else is having romances and things are heating up. And
Oh, right.
and I remember Doug talking about it and saying, this character has to have a real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also loved in this, we're coming up on it, but you got to see that part of Doug that's so like intense and serious and earnest, and he's trying to get her to do this and take a stand. And that's how I remember him, being such a man of principle.
Yeah.
Hilariously funny
Yeah.
and also really principled. It
Yeah.
was fun to see him. I was like, oh, there's Doug.
They decide that they want to go out for a bite to eat afterwards and continue their conversation. That's where Matt learns that Teresa and Rhonda went to high school together. And now that Teresa's making a living as a dancer, the audition to get her into this company was something that Rhonda was supposed to do 5 years ago. But at the last minute, Rhonda had broken her ankle and didn't end up making the audition. So that was news to Matt.
So that really shows that Rhonda has been hiding her own shames about this whole storyline about, is she good enough? And that whole, the whole thing's about frenemies. We'll see as we go on.
Yeah.
But for Matt, her best friend, to not know, he's like, wait, what? You auditioned? Wait, what? I don't know. They made a point of that.
Yeah.
In there.
And so we'll learn more about that.
Starts
But then we were back to Jake and Allison studying, and they're having coffee and staying up late, and she's pushing him to keep going. And she says the only way to cram is to cram. So let's keep going. So on they go.
And
with
very
their
heated studying. There's a lot of meaningful looks. There's
Yep.
a lot of head tilts.
Yep.
It's very,
Yep.
very loaded studying.
Yeah. And so back with Matt and Rhonda and Teresa, Matt is encouraging Rhonda to go to the audition. And hey, there's this, another opportunity to opening in the company. You should go. And, I think there's a reason that we, had this dinner with Teresa. I think there's a reason she was put in front of you. It's his fate. You should try out for this new opening in the company. What have you got to lose?
Can we talk about how Doug channeled Jimmy Stewart in that scene? Can we just talk about how, don't you believe in
Yep.
fate, Rhonda? And she's up on the thing, and he's just like, and
Yep.
these were the early days of Melrose.
Yeah.
That ended in a few more episodes, but I just love all that good. And he did it so beautifully. I just felt like, wow, what happened to this? What show am I watching?
Yeah, so
this is
sweet
not the
and
Melrose
earnest,
I
right?
came into.
So earnest and so encouraging.
yeah.
Don't you believe in fate? And,
Yeah.
yeah. Wonderful.
And we're off her considering what he just said.
Yeah.
So then the next morning, Billy is in the courtyard. He comes knocking on Jane and Michael's apartment because he's worried that Allison didn't come home last night. So we learn that Allison didn't come home that night. We know where she's been, but Billy doesn't know where she's been.
And people start gathering, right?
And-
like people start gathering.
Everyone comes out of their apartments and they all want to know,
We're
where?
all gathering around Jane and Michael's.
And the
And then the camera's
speculation.
back here, and yada, yada, yada. And then
Yep.
little
And
Allison
the
comes out of
speculation that she must have had a
Jake's
one night
apartment,
stand,
right
and that
behind.
puts that seed in Billy's head, and then out she comes from Jake's door.
Oh, hey, everyone's
Like, the
standing
one-night stand
around.
might
What are y'all
actually-
talking about?
And I gotta say, very impressed with Allison that she just sort of goes, basically, believe what you want. I'm not. It's none of your
Yeah.
business. I was like, good for you, because she's such a good girl. You would think she would immediately say, it's nothing. It's nothing. She does say it's not what you think, but in a very sort of light way that leaves it open for interpretation.
And she does the walk of not shame back to
Yeah.
her own
Yeah, the
apartment.
walk
She's
of
like,
pride.
no shame.
Yes.
I am just
I
doing
helped
what I'm
him
doing.
on his test. But wait, I have a question for the audience. I lived in an apartment, as I said earlier, with Darren, and I'm wondering if he got some of these stories from me. But I'm trying to remember. Anyway, but that's the only time I lived in an apartment, really, when I was young like that. And it was a small one. I want to know if the audience, like, how much do your neighbors become friends and get in your business? And I know over the years we've heard, like, oh, we had a place like that. But to come out and everyone's standing around having a discussion about, should we call the police because one of us didn't come home last night?
Yeah.
Is that normal? Does anyone else?
No.
I want to
I
hear
imagine
stop
stuff.
me all the time, and say, I lived in an apartment just like that. We were all friends. We all hung out. So I think it does happen. I didn't have that experience either, although I lived in an apartment and my boyfriend's best friend lived downstairs. So that had that sort of, we really would, if someone was having a barbecue, everybody showed up. It was minor because it was a duplex.
Yeah.
But I do think it happens.
Yeah.
But I don't think to the extent that we're talking about in this scene where everybody knew the precise moment to come out into the courtyard and get involved in this one conversation.
Yeah.
It's
Then
like,
there's
If
no
that
walking.
happened to you
oh,
exactly.
are we talking? Are we talking about Allison not coming? Okay, let's all talk about it. Like they all came out
Yeah.
precisely this moment to weigh in and say, she probably had a one
Yeah.
night stand and, whatever. And the speculation, all right. And then it's like she confirms it when she comes out. But like that, I think, obviously is a heightened sort of, and our courtyard, the
I
Melrose
believe
Courtyard, is
every
where
second
all
of it,
these-
Laura.
all these moments happen in the
and
courtyard.
how Billy and Allison, I don't know where you guys were, but
We
in
were
real
dating
life.
already,
Okay.
full on.
Okay. So it's an interesting point of like, you were just friends in the show. So at what point does he, I see him questioning, like, should I be, you know what I mean? Like, he's not just a friend. He really likes you, but is he getting too possessive? Is he expecting too much? Should he just let you be? It's a confusing
Well, in
time.
the last episode that I watched that you guys haven't seen yet, unless you're watching on Amazon, in which case you just watched it.
Oh, right.
We pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend with his parents. So the writers were definitely leaning toward this. I wondered watching it. I wondered if originally they had planned on Allison and Jake getting together, and then Andrew and I had such good chemistry. Maybe that's why. Maybe this show was already written, and then they pivoted because all of a sudden they were like, "Oh no, these two are going to get together."
Maybe.
See, I
just
felt
wondered.
like this was the moment where we got to challenge like what I thought the audience all wanted to see, which was Allison and Billy getting together,
Oh,
right? Then this is the
interesting.
moment that
Yeah,
we
I
put
thought
trouble
so.
in front of it, right?
That's
you
what I
have
thought.
you have trouble because then Sandy, who has this, obvious like back and forth attraction and situation with Jake that's sort of like underlying everything they say to each other.
Right.
It's an opportunity at the end of that scene for both Sandy. Sandy's exasperated with Jake, like, "Ugh, great, Jake, right?
Right.
She's exasperated that he had Allison
more
in his
person.
apartment all night. And
Yeah.
Billy's obviously distraught while everybody else just thinks it's funny. Like, Michael goes back in the apartment laughing about it. Like, oh, look, they spent the night together. But that's where we, as an audience, get to see Billy frustrated because of that growing interest in Allison, and then Sandy being frustrated about Jake, which does resolve later in the episode as the two of them get their like explanations, and they're like, phew, that's not what it was.
But Allison and Jake have such sweet chemistry. I was rooting for them. I was like, I'm like knowing in real life I was already
I can't
dating
believe
Andrew,
that you
but
forgot
I
it.
was rooting for them. They were so sweet together.
Yeah.
Very cute. So anyway, Allison goes back to the apartment and she still won't explain to Billy. She's not going to give up Jake's secret. She won't tell Billy about the
She's
GED
a vault,
test.
that Allison.
She is. She's keeping his
impressed
secret.
with her.
And oh, by the way, she needs to go get some sleep because she didn't get very much sleep last night. Which
And this, I think it was in this scene,
bothers
but
Billy.
and he goes, "But I tell you everything." Billy does. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
that was so sweet." But I tell you everything.
I know. That's what I mean.
Such
It's
a
that
sweetheart.
tough place, A lot of relationships start this way in real life, where you're like, oh, I don't want to say too much. You're just friends, but you really want to know. And I do. I told you this. You tell me this. I want to know.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
So then we're back to Rhonda. She shows up to work on the dancing with Teresa, and she says, "I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to audition for the company. I want to dance more funky." And Teresa tells Rhonda she needs to clean up her lines, and all of a sudden she's like sort of coaching her and helping her get ready for this competition. But it's clear that there is competition between the two of them, and it's a little bit feisty, a little bit friendly competition. I'm not so sure. It's just like actual competition. Teresa's awfully superior, I thought, with the way she's talking to Rhonda about it. But there is where this montage of them, the two of them dancing and working on this together, turned into a really elaborate montage.
Yeah.
of them.
The
And I
dancing
thought,
is really amazing.
yeah, and I thought again, like the amount of time it took to get that right, because the choreography, these girls had to rehearse that part off to the
shoot
side
it
to
over
get
and
that ready
over.
and then shoot it. And the montage, I thought it was really elaborate and like good production
Yeah,
value
really well done.
of that,
Well,
like,
and
thrown in there.
to the point of the character of Rhonda, I think it's, they're getting deeper with each. Here we are, 6 in, and they're getting deeper with each one. And that's important because she is a aerobics teacher or a funk.
Yeah, she's
whatever.
an aerobics teacher.
But
yeah.
she's a dancer at heart. They've
Yeah.
done that. So I loved how they spent the time on that for her.
And then at the end of that scene, that Rhonda says, let's go out to eat, and I want to have pasta. And Teresa sort of mentions, looking down on her, like, with 3 days before the audition, I think you should reconsider that pasta. making Rhonda feel insecure.
Oh, so glad I'm not a dancer.
Not cool. Back at Shooters, Billy goes to Shooters and he wants to commiserate with Sandy. So here again, I think it's an example of like these two that maybe have interest in Jake and Allison. They're sort of commiserating on like, what,
And this is, we haven't talked about this yet, but this is the episode where Sandy loses her accent.
absolutely
Yes.
noticed
Which is
that.
which is a relief, I'll be honest.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
that it just, you don't feel it anymore. It's like, oh, that's nice, that's gone.
Yep.
They initially had this girl from the Southern, and then they
Yes.
just said it's not working, just lose it.
It was distracting.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
without it, it's a lot.
And
it
then
works
everyone
better.
like just brushed it over it, and that was just,
Yeah.
no one ever
Yes.
talked about it.
We never talked about it again. We just,
I wonder if the audience ever, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure if there had been social
They're
media at
working
the
it-
time, it would have been discussed. It was
Discussed.
not
They're
at the
working
time.
stuff
But it
out,
was,
you
she
know?
Yeah,
she
we're
seemed a lot more
figuring it out.
comfortable.
Yeah.
The character just seemed a lot more comfortable. And
yes.
yeah, it was,
Doing accents
things were
is really
smoother with it. Yeah. While they're at the bar commiserating about this and sort of speculating on whether these two would get together, they both have sort of different versions of how they think it might have happened, and they go into a dream sequence.
But
Each of them have a
I just
little
want to say
dream
there was
sequence
one
again.
funny line that Andrea goes, she was tired. She was spent. I was like, oh, that's very clear. Like his whole story.
yeah.
Yes, but then you're right. They both have fantasy.
Oh, I love
sequences.
hers fantasy.
Yeah.
No, I think it happened like this.
And they go
and
into
then
that
you
dream
guys
sequence.
act it out.
Yeah, it's funny. So in hers, Allison is clearly the aggressor, which was
I
fun.
just
How much
watched
fun for
Nine-
me to play as an actor that I got to do
Yes.
these different
That
characters.
like black outfit and 9.5 weeks video. I was wondering if you could watch this with me.
Right.
You nailed it, girl. That was great. It was great to see Allison do that.
But
Super
Billy's
fun.
version, like Billy's version is like no, and he's just, so like Sandy's trying to have her version like make excuses for why Jake might have like done that. Well, it was all she was so aggressive,
Right, he was
and then
like, sure.
Billy's version, he's trying to emasculate Jake by
Yes.
saying, "Well, it was just it was super clunky, like dream sequence. Well, this happened, and then he's afraid of spiders, so then Allison goes to take care of those spiders. It was so bizarre.
But Jake's
and
top
random.
was off.
Yes,
that was
Jake's
fun.
so-
That was really
that was
fun.
really funny.
Smart of
Those
the writers
moments
to
were
do that,
fun.
don't you think?
So cute.
Super funny.
We got to be a little more whimsical.
Yeah.
Before it got dramatic. Like,
I
that
like,
was a
but
really fun
there's been a dream
scene.
sequence in almost every, like in like 4 episodes so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, but every scene is like, oh my God, they're making out again. Oh my God, they're making out again. I don't
Yes.
remember it at the time.
So
I was like,
funny.
oh, jeez.
So then back at Allison is at Jake's apartment and they're getting to know each other a little bit more. And Allison reveals to Jake that she got good grades, but felt like she didn't really fit in school. By the way, I thought she was wearing a very cute outfit, high-waisted shorts. Did you notice those?
I did.
Super cute, like very current right now.
It's all back.
Yet again.
Yeah,
It's
all back.
It's all back.
And Jake reveals he was the opposite in high school. He, seemed cool, but he sort of like didn't care about stuff. And, now he sort of regrets living that way. And now he's for the first time feeling hopeful about his future.
I like the moment of Allison saying, I live so much in the future, I wasn't in the moment. I'm like, and there's your spiritual lesson from Melrose Place
From
for the
Allison.
day. Live in the moment,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? The present is a gift.
But they do bond over the fact that neither one of them really know where they're headed. They don't, both of them feel equally confused, although they have sort of different paths to get there.
That's why it felt like Breakfast Club
Yep.
to me, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like,
Yep.
we look so different, and yet inside we're just the same. I thought it was so
Well, yeah,
cute.
I thought it was Melrose version. You guys are about to make out, and you're like in shorts, and you're in one of your apartments, but it's Breakfast Club.
And there, Allison broaches the subject. She says, "Does it bother you that everyone in the building thinks, we're having a thing?" Mm-hmm. And instead of answering the question, he turns it around and says, "Does it bother you?" And it looks
Yeah.
like it doesn't bother either of them.
Yeah. Oh, well, if they're saying it,
Then we're back to Teresa and Rhonda, where the sass is sort of escalating. She's telling Rhonda not to eat the pasta, and I thought that Teresa was a real sass monster here. And they start having
Rhonda's
their
like,
argument.
I have a great metabolism, which she does.
Yeah.
And eat anything.
But Teresa accuses Rhonda of being bitter and jealous, and Rhonda says there's no way she's going to let Teresa, mess her up and psych her out. She's coming for that spot in the dance company. So
Yeah.
Rhonda's determined. Back with Billy and Allison in the apartment. Billy wants Allison to go to the beach with him. And Allison says, sorry, can't. I got to spend the day with Jake. But she still won't tell him why. So this is where he gets really hurt. And like, wait a minute, I tell you everything.
Yeah.
This is where he's feeling like maybe I'll stop. Maybe I'll stop telling you everything if you don't tell me what's going on with you. But Allison is a vault. We go to the aerobics studio where Matt is again taking the aerobics class that Rhonda's teaching. And today Rhonda is teaching very aggressively.
So Doug doesn't remember taking the aerobics classes.
Recollection. He was just shocked. He's like, he's not a guy who enjoys dancing now. And he's like, gosh, for somebody who doesn't really dance, they had me dancing a lot. And he has no recollection.
Such a pro.
Of it.
He just
He's
just
such
throw
a
me
pro.
into whatever scene. I don't
Yeah,
know.
he really was. He's like,
Yeah.
all right, that's what we're doing.
But he had to
Okay.
learn a few steps to do that.
Yeah.
Bungee jumping, he's dancing. There's so much to do.
Yeah. Rhonda sort of scolds him for not doing it right. And he's like, dude,
Yeah.
what's...
She's mad at
Yeah,
everybody.
Why the tension? So they walk out after the class. Rhonda reveals she is nervous about the audition and Matt is worried about her stress level. And she says, I'm going back to the studio to rehearse even more.
Good for her.
So then we find Allison quizzing Jake on state capitals. They're at a bar doing the studying. He gets all the answers right. He says he knows all this from his life experience. He's tired of studying, wants to go somewhere else, and says, are you game? Should we go? She says, yep. And off they go. Back at the studio, Matt comes to the studio late to find Rhonda still working late at night. He says he's worried about her. And he, by the way, is wearing his Birkenstocks and socks again. And something he would never wear.
I don't remember that from the 90s. Like,
And he's not allowed to wear now.
No, he's not allowed to wear them. He won't even wear
Birkenstocks
Birkenstocks.
are totally back.
Yeah.
I don't know about the socks.
But he's got
Oh,
both.
back,
He's got
like
Birkenstocks
designer Birkenstocks.
and his
Yeah.
socks. And Rhonda reveals then that the audition from 5 years ago, she didn't actually break her ankle.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the reveal of her
Big
secret.
reveal.
That she was,
Heartbreaking.
that she felt like the pressure was so intense and she just sort of made up the story about the broken ankle so she wouldn't have to go through with it. She was afraid of failing.
She even wore a bandage, she said,
Yep.
for weeks.
And that her parents maybe had never forgave her. And she feels like Teresa maybe is living the life she was meant to have. And so this audition feels really important to her.
Yeah, and then you think back to about all the other scenes in the restaurant with Teresa when this is the truth, right? And they're having these arguments based on this lie. You go, wow, she was really behind that lie. Like she really committed to that lie for so long.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she tells her truth to Matt, and then we cut back to Allison, who's now on the back of Jake's motorcycle.
Allison on a motorcycle. Are you kidding?
Do you remember that? Were you actually, was it like green screen? Like, were you actually up there? It kind of looked a little bit like it might have been.
I mean, Grant rode a motorcycle.
Right.
Right?
But was it like, because if the camera's parallel to you and you're going like, right? Because was it poor man's?
I was at scenes up there on the motorcycle when I came on.
You bought a motorcycle.
Yeah, in real life, yes. But I also, as Joe was on the back of his motorcycle up there, we went up to Mulholland and rode around. You know, you just get another car, you block it off.
And so the camera is in a car, driving parallel to you, shooting out.
Yeah, or there's one where you go by. And so you probably were, but
you don't remember.
It was a long time ago.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know if I'm remembering like when you hear a story a lot about when you're a kid and you go, I remember that. They go, you were 2. I don't know, so I don't know
and now
if
you've
I
been
remember.
watching it.
Or now I've seen it. I remember what it looked like. So I don't know.
Yeah. So Jake is taking her up to Mulholland to see the view, which is where it gets very, very flirty.
I was so surprised by this because I thought, like, okay, we've had this fantasy scene and that was it, the fantasy scene. And then as we're on this lookout, having this very romantic, sweet, flirty scene, the chemistry was amazing. I'm like, what? What could possibly happen? I don't have any memory of it.
Yeah. Well, you don't have a memory of the actual kiss up there on
No.
Mulholland? That's hysterical.
No,
Okay.
he tells her we're not in high school anymore.
Yeah, and
they kiss.
And they're discussing how they're total opposites. And like they never would have made sense in high school. And he says, we're not in high school. And it leads to this lovely kiss. And
Yeah,
I will.
yummy kiss too. That was yummy. That was nice. I wish I
Hard
remembered
watch,
it.
but
I
you
wish
don't
I
remember
remembered
it.
it.
Yeah,
No, but I do
It's so
know.
long ago.
I do know because he and I had scenes later. Like Allison and Jake dated later, so I did remember he was a really
The
good
sloppy
kisser.
seconds version.
It must have been because I was dating Andrew. I must have I have to block this out. I cannot let myself because I couldn't say to Andrew. It was yummy. You're not allowed to say that.
Not really. Yeah.
So apparently I blocked it out, but I could see that it was nice.
But speaking, I
So
mean,
nice.
in your defense, like Doug was watching the show with me and he's like, what is happening?
I know. It did come out of nowhere.
He didn't
just
see it
as an
coming. And then all of a
audience
sudden it
member.
was like this lovely real kiss. And he was like, what
Well,
is
I
that?
am honestly, like, I'm half kidding, but honestly, so Andrew and I are dating. We're in a new relationship, and we're all friends. So then you say you have this friend group, and then your producers say, now you have to make out with this other friend. I imagine it was quite a lot for us all to handle, so we all just blocked it out. As
I
a
think it's
community. We
I think
just
it's trauma
blocked it
that you've
out.
all just blocked it out because nobody can remember any of it.
Because I had to keep saying to Andrew, "Oh, it was nothing. Oh, it was nothing. It was a living hell. It was work. It was a living hell." Right? So then I started to process.
He'd
that.
come home and go, "Where were you all day? Were you shooting with Grant again?" And
It was awful.
I tell you everything.
You guys, this is the episode that it suddenly occurred to me we need to stop counting kisses within an episode. It's more about a tally, like who kissed who. Like this is the episode where that occurred to me, like, wait a minute, our kiss count needs to be more about like who has kissed who, because like we're gonna just keep counting kisses every
Weren't
episode.
we
It's like
each in charge
sure.
of counting our own who we kissed? Because
I don't
I've
know.
already had 2.
Well, this is
my-
what I'm
not in it,
saying.
so
This
we
is
were
my
counting.
second, and
This
off
is what I'm-
camera I'm kissing Andrew. So I
Okay,
don't know that
we're
that
gonna
counts,
make
but
a
I
chart.
know it's happening.
Our new kiss count is going to be a chart, and there's going to be graphics.
Chart.
Yeah, it's going to be like a pie chart.
A PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
It's going to get so long.
And
Yeah, totally.
later on, you can't even keep up
we have
with it.
so far to go. We're really only on episode 6.
Yeah, really. This is like a dot.
Yeah,
dot,
but
dot.
already I do need to keep a tally. Like, so
Okay.
I'll make a chart. I'll have it next week. So, Allison and Billy in the morning. Allison tells Billy that the reason they were spending time together was because of the test. She reveals now, okay, let me tell you the truth. I was helping Jake
Not the whole
study
truth.
for the test.
Let me tell you
Right.
part of the truth.
Yeah, right.
But Billy is visibly very relieved. And oh, phew, my imagination was getting away with me. And oh, you guys have nothing in common. To which Allison is saying, you know what? I got to know him and I like him. And you really have to be able to see beyond people's facades.
And weren't you thinking at this point in the episode, because we know that it doesn't become something at this point in the show, weren't you thinking, how do we disentangle this?
Well, yeah, it's going to be tricky, is what you
Yes.
think. It's a little tricky because she is keeping the secret. She's not going to tell the part about the
Right.
kiss. And Billy is obviously interested in Allison enough to be relieved that it was only studying for a test. Like, whew. So it is. It does seem to be like an
Where do we
entanglement
go from here?
Yeah. And then we also find that Sandy is sort of talking to Jake about the Allison thing, saying, well, you have nothing in common, but if you two are happy, you should go for it. She's sort of testing him, and he says, no, the real reason we were hanging out is she was helping me study for a test. So he comes clean to her as well and resolving that relationship. Sandy is visibly relieved and says, you could have come to me for help. I would have helped you. But he says, well, that would have been a distraction.
Oh.
So we're keeping that sort of possibility alive too. So it's getting very complicated. So then Rhonda's audition. We're at the audition, and all of a sudden, for the first time, Matt is wearing his baseball hat correctly. Did anybody notice that?
Big news.
It's
Big
the
news.
first time we've seen Matt wearing his baseball
It's
hat
forward?
correctly. Forward.
Oh, that's surprising because that wasn't allowed either because you can't even see the eyes.
Right. But he was at the audition being her supportive best friend, and he did have his baseball hat on, and he says to her that he would miss her if she gets the job, but go get it. And at that point, Doug said he still does not remember a single one of those scenes. Still nothing. So
And it looked very Flashdance, right? Like, so do we think,
Very.
so she's obviously a good dancer, Vanessa,
Yes.
but I think they had a double because otherwise why would she be backlit? Right, so that we shoot a lot from the back and we can't see her. It's a great double if
Yep.
it is a double. Really,
It was-
looks like her, the really long limbs.
terrific, but I ended up not knowing for sure if it was a double.
Yeah,
because
you did a great
Vanessa's
job.
a great
I
dancer,
think it was
and
both. Great job.
I
She's
think
a
it
great
was both.
dancer.
Yeah.
There was that shot on the ground where they shot the shadow and the spinning around, but I think obviously some of it was Vanessa. It was what they always do in the movies.
the front is clearly Vanessa,
Yeah.
but the back to me,
sometimes it's for
Which was
a
true in
sex scene,
Flashdance
sometimes
too,
it's-
right? I mean,
what?
that's what they did in Flashdance too. Didn't
Yeah.
it feel Flashdance-y?
Yes,
Very,
I
yeah.
think they were going for that.
Yeah.
for
yeah,
sure.
great.
the front and the back. And the director of the dance company is this guest star, Charles Randolph Wright. He actually went on. He's a huge, accomplished director, executive producer, choreographer, writer. He's like done mostly directing for the remainder of his career. Very
great.
accomplished director.
So cool.
Yeah, very cool. And so after the audition, Teresa follows Rhonda out into the lobby and tells her she's going to get a call back for sure. And we saw it on Teresa's face that she was like watching Rhonda and feeling a combination, like a lot of emotions,
Totally.
like pride, also like sad. A lot of things were going through her face. I thought she was beautiful in that scene,
Teresa?
showing a lot of colors. Yeah. About how she was feeling about that. And then she admits to Rhonda that she had actually wanted to see Rhonda fail.
Yeah, I mean, I thought she was
Her apology, I thought, was-
feeling threatened by Rhonda. I think
Yeah.
that's what that close up was. Of
Yeah,
her.
absolutely.
Right. Okay. The truth, I've tried to hide it. She's tried to hide it. It is coming up. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like she's really good.
Yeah, but she tells her the truth, and it's her apology, saying,
Yes.
"You know what? I wasn't a good friend. I wanted to see you fail. I was threatened by you. I always thought if you had auditioned 5 years ago, I never would have gotten this job, and so I was, nervous that you were going to come in and take my job. But you know what? You deserve it." And that's when Rhonda says, "Even if I get it, I'm not going to take it because I've realized I like my life, and I don't even want to know if I get the job." And that whole thing was resolved. Rhonda and Matt leave the dance studio before even finding out if she got the spot.
Yeah, that was a really sweet scene. Talk about freedom. Like, I just needed
Yeah.
to know I could do it. I don't need to have the reward.
Yep,
I
she
like
just
that
needed
scene.
to
Yeah,
know.
I did too.
As Rhonda and Matt were leaving, I caught a glimpse of Doug's sides in his back pocket. Did you guys see that?
Sides are the little
Minis.
Right.
Yeah, the scripts we have. We have little mini scripts so we can keep our lines with
Yep,
us.
they're folded
Oh,
very
that's
small,
so
and you usually
funny.
have them in your hand when you're just trying to, last minute, follow along, know where you are, whatever, when you're rehearsing, but you
sides,
forget. And you
just
might leave them in your pocket. I
For
saw
the
them.
audience, are those days lines that
Yep.
are given to us? And in the old days, they were this regular size, and your pages, all of them, would be stapled together. And then I remember coming to set one day in some year or some show, and they were a quarter of this size.
The minis, yeah.
And they're minis, and they're like shrunk so little. And I was just like, and then I started just saying, can I have regular size, please?
Can I have grown-up size?
Because of the glasses, I couldn't. Because when I needed glasses, it was, you sometimes you just want to pull them out from under a prop that's in front of you and sneak your line. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But when they were so shrunken into these minis, whoever invented those, I think too many directors and cameramen saw these all over the set. You know what I mean? Like our little cheat sheets.
No, they're like
we
blooper
got to make them
reels.
smaller.
Yeah, when you find these things lying, they're not supposed to be in the shot.
in a
They're supposed
pocket.
to be hidden. And this was one of those
That's so
moments where
funny
they
you saw that.
caught a glimpse. And then we're back with Allison and Jake, where Allison talks to Jake and says, last night that was really fun, but that was just a kiss. We're just friends. We're just going to be friends. And it seemed to be like a mutual understanding that that's what it was. It was just all sort of like abruptly decided.
Yeah, now we're done. We're moving on to
that's
something
just
else.
that. And
But
come
it
on, I'll
was
buy you a
sweet,
beer.
And I was proud of them for having the conversation and not just moving awkwardly to say that was lovely, but let's let it stay there.
Yeah.
And that scene takes place, as we were saying earlier, on the sound stages in Santa Clarita, outside the production offices. So probably when Jake was walking out, some of our production was in there, and probably Andrew was using the fax to start do something.
Yeah.
He was doing political.
So right behind that door is like our whole, office staff. And then we did that all. That became Jane's store.
It was Jane's Boutique, but also it was the aerobic studio. So every time Rhonda had an aerobics class, they would clear our production offices out, and they'd have to take the fax machine out and everything, and they would set dress to make it look like an aerobic studio.
And also the hospital used to, remember some of the hospital outside, right? Later?
Exterior. So
Exterior,
outside
the
the building,
parking lot.
they do like the parking lot and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So we would utilize not just the sound stages that were there in Santa Clarita, but they'd use the office, which was the front part. They would convert it into another set, and then the exteriors as well.
They'd have to move some of the camera trucks sometimes to,
How many stages did we have at the end?
2, I think.
I thought we had 2.
Just 2? Oh, I thought we had more.
Did that
NCIS shot there.
Before that, there was that. What was that Jamie Lee Curtis Schwarzenegger movie? They shot that up there, I think.
True
Some of
Lies?
it. True Lies. I think they shot some of that there.
But we had it to ourselves for the most part.
was
It was just
ours.
like
I
this
know it was ours.
isolated
Only.
place
We were
up on the
only one
hill.
out there. Do you remember our security guard? Like this one, there was like a booth and a guy, and
It was just
no
like
gate.
it was
just
so
like-
quiet
so
and easy.
private
We'd
and
walk
safe.
around in our slippers and
Totally.
our sort of our robes, and it was just
Yeah.
comfortable, and it was
nice.
our home. But then Allison says, "Come on, I'll buy you a beer," and that story is neatly wrapped up. And she takes him to Jake. She takes Jake to Shooters, where everybody in the gang is waiting to congratulate him on his graduation. They're wearing graduation caps, and that was really cute. And he's surprised. Doug has his graduation cap on top of his baseball hat. Which no, he cannot recall, but he did like the choice anyway. And that's where Sandy says to Allison, "I just knew that you two couldn't be a thing. You know, too much. You're not alike enough." And Allison gets the best line,
Burn.
the punchline to her, just to taunt her. Yeah, but he's a really good kisser.
Yeah,
And
but
that's-
I love how you use your delivery.
Yep.
Just like you just smacked her.
Yep.
And walked off. He's
Yep.
a really great kisser.
Here's
and
some
you just
food
walk off
for
to camera,
thought.
and she's like, "What?
Yep,
Come back here!" But
food for thought. So now Sandy knows that happened, or does she?
I really
she
do love how we all came back together. How you guys, the everyone came together from the apartment to surprise him, and he didn't, because again, acknowledging what he kept a secret for so long and what was painful and shameful, like, was really celebration at the end.
Yeah, and that really is like these first episodes. We're getting to know the characters.
Yeah.
And you go the little bit more, a little bit breadcrumbs. And I also think it's so cute because you guys keep saying when we're all together, which is true
We're
because
not there yet.
it feels like because we're going so slowly, but really you're 14 and 19, right? The episodes you guys come, and then you're on for the rest of it. So it's only a few episodes without you, and it is a we. Right? It's strange to me that you guys aren't here. I keep saying we.
Yeah, I know,
when
it's
we were all
funny.
together.
Well, I feel like this season, because it was such a different tone, it feels like a whole different like segment of time. That like the bulk of what we think about when we remember this time were those crazy years of seasons 2, 3, 4, 5. Like those is what we talk about as we, and this tonally is we're still in like stage one, before
this
shifts.
show wasn't a hit. The show we're watching now it was sweet.
Yeah.
And then the show you guys are on was a hit. So they're two kind of separate
so
shows.
funny.
Really. That's
So,
why
and
it's
at this
different.
time, so episode 6, they were almost halfway through their initial order, which was 13 episodes were originally contracted.
Yeah, and Andrew, our businessman, was coming with all what the ratings meant and what I was like, whatever. We're just here to do our work.
And it wasn't.
But he was paying very.
It
close
wasn't
attention.
great at this point. It was
They were-
sort
it
of
was
holding
not
steady
great.
at mediocre.
We
Yeah.
were after 90210, and we were not holding our own. Like there, I remember there was a drop off. Andrew might even remember. Honestly, he paid such close attention to the numbers. There was sort of a drop off, and then you guys came out. Did Heather come on before you?
just after.
Just after. Okay, that's when we'll get to that. But I remember we got new trailers. Heather came on. Like Heather can't be in these disgusting trailers you guys have been in for 5 months.
Gotta love Aaron. He
you,
takes
Heather.
care of his girls.
Heather, we're so happy you're here for so many reasons.
I mean, I think Aaron called Heather his, lucky,
His good luck charm.
his good luck
he
charm.
loved Heather.
So
Yeah.
he's like, I gotta get those kids some new trailers.
Yeah.
My good luck charm's coming.
Yeah,
That's
and she
great.
didn't ask. I remember she didn't ask for anything. It wasn't. She didn't demand it. They just wanted to take care of her. And I think we had favored nations with trailers, which means everybody gets the same. So we were like, thanks, Heather.
Yeah,
Like,
thanks.
Everybody's
Nice.
lives got a little better when Heather showed up.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do we have time to do a couple
Let's
questions?
do. We have some audience questions, and
I would like to know, Daphne, how your relationship with Darren Star changed after you started on the show.
I didn't see him very often because the writers were nowhere near us. They were here in LA and we were out in the sticks and in Santa Clarita, which now is like just another neighborhood, it seems like. But back then it was pretty far. But I do remember a couple of these lines. So I come in, like we said later this season. And I remember using the fax and sending him some edits I had in a scene or two, just going, "Oh, it's Darren, like I'm sure he'll be fine." And they're like, "So
not
he's
how this
like-
works here, Daph.
So I was like, "No, but she repeats herself, and I think maybe this might be better. This is we don't need that." Yeah. So I sent him some to make it more flowy, and I got back good editing from Darren.
Don't ever
Good
do that
editing.
again.
No, we don't really do that here. And I was like, oh, okay, you're the boss. I'm the, you know what I mean? Like it was,
Yes.
so I had to, he was very sweet about it and I got it, I mean, and I can't even imagine if 8 or 9 of us started like, can we just,
Yeah.
and then shortly at some point in there, we were not to at all. If I had another thing, they would say, so that was just one thing. I think it grew. I mean, we stayed friends. It's just a clear thinking, oh, I got a buddy in the office. Not a big deal. And I was like, yeah. He said, yeah, we don't really do that here.
Yeah, because I think because we were so far, first of all, we ruined it for you because in the beginning, people were changing things left and right. And it's not like on a sitcom, you call up, the guys come down and you work through it, right? We were so
Right, which
far
you've
apart.
had so much experience
So many
on.
sitcoms. We were so far apart that they felt like they were losing control and people were actually changing the meaning of lines, not just making it more comfortable. So they got really strict because it was like it had been taken advantage of. So that's on
So that
us.
is a
That's
difference
on
on a
That's on the
sitcom.
first
I
cast.
didn't know
Are
that
the
was
writers
happening.
right there?
The writers are right there, and they come down
and
every
they say,
day,
try
read
this.
through.
Like I've done a couple guest stars on it. So
Yeah, they come. They're there all the time. They're there every day. But you don't really change it on your own. You wait till they come down. They come down every day. You do a run through, and then you say this isn't working. You all work together to fix it.
And there's a script, and they would say like, try this phrase instead, right?
Yeah,
And you'd work at it, and they'd say, no, it doesn't work. Go back, or I think
yeah.
that's-
You get to rehearse it every day. So they didn't get to see us rehearse it. Like sometimes on a movie, you'll have the writers there, and you'll do it. Something won't work, and then they'll fix it and do it right there. But they were so far away. that
they couldn't
they
have us
really
doing our own.
Couldn't have us
So-
doing our own thing.
Okay, so here's another question somebody asked, and I'll just pose it to the group. If you could have played any other character, male or female, who would you want to play?
I would play Grant because I like to be topless. No.
I suspected as much. I suspected that would be your answer. For all the times that you've showed up for this podcast topless, I thought, I bet
Please,
she's
Courtney,
Courtney wants
we
to
bring a shirt for Courtney. Put a shirt on.
She wants to show off her six pack.
Well, Laura, I loved watching Sydney, but I thought all the time, that's so amazing. Thank God I don't have to do it. That's what I often thought. They put you through the ringer. You were willing and able to do the craziest thing. I was full of admiration and fear.
Healthy fear.
I like to think I would have liked to play Sydney, but I don't know that I would have had the balls.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah. She was definitely a fun character to play.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
you were like, all right. They throw something crazy at you and you were like, all right. And you would do it.
Kind of didn't have a choice. You're like, all right. Yeah. But it was truly super fun.
You committed all of it. I was like,
Totally.
wow,
You committed to everything.
Yes.
She was such a chameleon, and all those outfits were on my side seemed like over the top, or like out of Mary Tyler Moore, a beret one minute. You know what I mean? And yet, and your little outfits all matched, and yet you made it work, because behind all that is crazy. I mean, there's a crazy girl back there, you know, and but I never wanted to play Sydney. I loved playing Joe, to be honest. But there were times when I thought, oh, what would it be like to be in D&D and play Amanda or something like that, you know, because she wasn't a bitch, you know, and Amanda was like this crazy mean woman, and you guys went at each other and stuff, and she wasn't like that, so maybe.
It would be fun. I thought that sometimes would be fun to play a bitch, and then I got to be drunk Allison, and drunk Allison
was probably a lot of fun too.
Drunk Allison was super fun. That's one thing about a show like this, that you think, I want to be that character, and the next thing you know, oh, I am that character. Like, we just got to
give
do
you
so many things because
sure.
it changed so much. But you had the most extreme swings from week to week, and somehow you made it work. I still don't know how you did it.
I had a lot of people ask me, like, would I have liked to play another character? And the truth is, I loved playing Sydney. Like, I thought it was so fun, you know, and as the character, and she's not there yet. She's not where we're on the recap. We're not there yet. But as she arrived and then evolved, she really grew into this character that would morph into whatever was going on, you know, and I liked, there were times when I felt like Sydney was kind of doing her own show, you know, like Sydney was allowed to wear hats. Sydney was allowed to do crazy stuff that none of the other characters were. It was somehow okay for Sydney to do it and not for the other characters. Right. So I felt like I was on my own little comedy planet. Like I was like, I get to kind of find the funny in this, where everybody else is just a little bit more earnest and straight. And I felt really lucky about that. And I really enjoyed that and appreciated that. I felt like she had kind of a lot of leeway with the character, and I got to play around, and it just felt really fun. So I really appreciated that was the character I got to play.
You could see that you were having fun. That's part of what made the character so much fun.
It was a blast.
Yeah. You really made that work.
I'm sure I'll be mortified when we get to, you know, like there'll be a million ways that I'll be mortified for my acting and the character at the beginning. Like I was a brand new actress and still figuring it out. So I'm sure I'll be mortified, but
I see things that obviously there are moments that aren't great, but I have so much compassion for myself. I was so young.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was 30 years ago. So you're just going to go, oh, sweetie, you could have made a better choice.
We were the younger,
right?
Yeah, but you know, also I've watched some of that recently over the last few years. And, you know, you start out what you're saying, this comedic relief maybe. But you have some serious stuff later, Laura, and you knocked it out of the park. I was like, how is she going to handle, you know, whether it's the call girl stuff or all of this horrible stuff that happened to you. And I'm like, that's where you were earnest. That's where your real stuff showed through. And that's a great talent to be able to do both.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
It
was fun. And one more question?
One more. How much say do we have over our character style, hair, makeup, and clothes? Let's start with Laura, because we were talking about how.
Yeah, so that's part of what Sydney, I think, had a unique position. Like the character got to do some crazy things, and so we were able to push some boundaries with that. And definitely in the, like, I would say the third and then the fourth season, we were given a lot of leeway to play around, and I was super grateful for that. It would be a collaborative thing with wardrobe and hair and makeup, like, this, you know, for a while Sydney's going to be a secretary, so she adopted this like sort of like 50s and 60s vibe and like the flip and the hairstyle, and so like those were really fun things to play around with. but it was particular to that character. I don't think that that we had the same, boundaries that other characters probably had, but just by virtue of it being Sydney, we got to have a lot of fun with it.
Did you have say on yours?
Yeah, I mean, especially when Denise Wingate came on, she really wanted us to be comfortable. But I remember one time she said, okay, we just got a note, shorter, brighter, tighter on Allison. And I was like, oh dear. But I was self-conscious about my body. I had very big breasts and I really felt, but she really was careful about like making me feel comfortable. Like I'm looking at these shows going, I wish someone had said, don't wear such big shirts, right? Like in the early episodes, I'm like, get something fitted. But I was uncomfortable. I felt self-conscious. So she was very careful to make sure I was comfortable and try to walk the line. Like they want this, they want the skirts this short, but I wanted them longer. So she would find something in the middle that would work for everybody. But she always chose my comfort over their demands, right? So if I had a bathing suit scene, she would let me wear shorts over my bathing suit or whatever it was that would make us feel more comfortable. Right? So it felt like a compromise. Like they had she'd tell me what the note was and say, this is where they want us to go. So what can we do to give them some of what they want, but make you comfortable? So it felt very collaborative.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
For a wardrobe person, Denise Wingate, who went on to do huge movies.
We adore her.
She and I were hired the same time, and we both were like, went into Aaron Spellings. And as I've said before, we kind of missed the mark the first scene, the first day on set. She had an idea and they just wanted it totally the opposite. So I went from like some kind of a little bit of a sophisticated New York outfit because it was sort of like Upper East Side, probably my husband was of a New York family. And then they're like, no. And I ended up in jeans and black and went the other way. But she was totally collaborative. So I would have to say I was more comfortable, to your point, in kind of like those, I don't know what they are. Like they're more drawstring with patterns and funky, my vests and things like that. And the jewelry was more funky than just straight kind of tough punk New York. So she was really into that too. But I gotta say, but it wasn't, I didn't create it.
Yeah.
She had the vision and that's one of the things I love about a good wardrobe person. You come in, they give you all these choices and you're like, I love that.
Well, and it's really intimate too. It's really personal, intimate because you have to be comfortable in it. And you're, and also like your hair and your makeup person. Yeah. Those are really, you're like, they're up close and personal and working on, I got really close to makeup and hair people, and especially Lona Jeffers was our makeup artist, or
and
like
Greg
you just get
Lucava
really
was
close to
mine.
those people because you're trusting them, and they're so thoughtful for you and how they're
you're spending 2 hours
two
with
are
them at 6
pros.
a.m.
They were
work
union
early.
Such pros.
doing this since the 70s probably. I think Greg retired not shortly after, but he used to ride a bicycle, not a bicycle, a BMW motorcycle. But I felt in such good hands with them.
They're just really intimate relationships for actors. Like those are the people that really care for you so closely, and we felt very cared for.
Yeah.
And people were, as the show started to take off, people were watching our hair and our clothes and our makeup. So it felt important because people were talking about it. So you really wanted to
and Lona and Greg were like getting all this product. Don't you remember? Like all this stuff would come in and I'm trying this new.
Yeah, the days of free stuff. I miss all the free stuff.
I know the free stuff. So yeah.
All right. It's been so fun to read fans' comments and questions, and we're getting people asking questions and leaving their thoughts on our Instagram and all our socials. We love that. We just started a Facebook account, so that's another way that fans
is
can
that
find us.
still the place on
Still
Facebook?
the place.
Still the
Great.
place.
Facebook. Yep. Instagram.
Follow us on
and
Instagram, the
TikTok.
two of us, Laura Layton and Daphne Zuniga, and Still the Place.
And Still the Place.
And then hashtag Courtney Thorne Smith.
We have another episode that Courtney's already gotten a jump on, but we'll have another episode.
tell you all about
more
it.
recaps and more guests to come. Yep. Can't wait to see you next week.